In the sports world, a warm-up is a phase of movement that gradually increases in intensity to help prepare the body for the task at hand. Typically, a standard athletic warm-up will include a pulse raiser to improve circulation of blood around the body and improve body temperature, some general movement and mobility work to get the joints limbered up for movement, and then an integration of the basic fundamental movements from the sport in question. In cubing, things usually look quite different. So a cubing warm-up most of the time is just jumping straight into that integration phase in phase 3, where we just start practicing solves, getting them steadily faster and faster until we feel like we're good to go. If you want to go fancy, it might include some full slow solves as well as spamming some PLLs. So in this video, I want to ask if there's anything from the athletic world we can learn about warm-ups that could be useful to bring over to the cubing world, as well as sharing some of the joint mobility warm-up routines that I have found to be useful for myself when cubing. So first of all, let's address why we might have a different warm-up in the first place. And it probably seems pretty obvious. Cubing just really isn't such a physical endeavor. Your hands are pretty dexterous all day long. They don't necessarily need loads of stretching and mobility work to be able to function properly. And running around to get your heart rate up probably doesn't seem too sensible when you're just going to sit back down again for your solve. And that translates to other sports as well. So the less physically demanding the sport, the less time spent on that more general warm-up phase, and the sooner they get into the more technical aspect. But if we were to analyze why these things were put in place in other sports in the first place, we might get some good answers as to what could be useful to cross over into the cubing. So let's start with the pulse raiser. Many athletes start with a run around to increase their heart rate. This is the way that we get fuel to the muscles more quickly, which is essential if the activity levels of these muscles are about to go up. But as well as the muscles, the other place that we need to get more fuel to is the brain, and this is something that we really should care about in such a cognitively demanding sport. If we could increase the amount of blood flow getting to the brain, we stand to make huge gains in our visual processing time, as well as our ability to focus and make decisions. So running around is probably still a little bit pointless, but did you know that your heart rate is strongly connected to your breath? Therefore, a more appropriate way to increase your heart rate for cubing would be to take 5 to 10 sharp inhales, so breathing in, followed by a slow, relaxed exhale. The inhale, while it needs to be strong, it doesn't necessarily need to be super fast, so you should be aiming to hit your maximum lung capacity each time. The exhale, on the other hand, we're going to pay a lot less attention to. It doesn't need to go all the way out. You just need to calmly exhale and breathe out until you hit a relaxed neutral position. And just this exercise on its own should go a long way to getting much more oxygen to your brain, which is going to help you get started with cubing with all cylinders firing. So next we'll look at phase 2, which was the stretching and mobility component. The risk of a cubing injury at all times is usually pretty low, and we're going to get away with a lot more in this regard compared to a high-intensity athlete. Our fingers and hands don't usually require as much preparation for movement, as they get quite a lot of it at all points during the day. But that being said, one of the things that we don't focus on a lot throughout the day is coordination of these joints. If we could place some conscious, focused attention into our hands before we started cubing, the improvements to our coordination would help to reduce a lot of lockups, which is going to lead to faster solve times overall, but also result in less tissue damage of the joints. And the best way that we can improve our coordination is through speed regulation. I'm going to be sharing a couple of drills that I normally use, and the way that I find works best is to do 1 rep incredibly slow, 3 reps at normal speed, and then 5 reps at the maximum speed that we can. Like I said, this is the routine that I specifically use myself before competitions, so I'd be really curious to hear if you tried it and how you got on with it. Then, rather than going into the details of the phase 3, the integration, I think we got this nailed down as cubers, I'd like to talk a little bit about how you might create your own personalized warm-up to get the most benefit out of your cubing. Because even though I might be saying that all of these things are important, really the only metric that we need to know for something to be useful as part of a cubing warm-up is, by doing it, does it actually make you better at cubing without increasing your risk of injury? And really, as long as you're meeting these criteria, you can pretty much do whatever you like when it comes to the warm-up. In most sports, you'll find that the beginners all tend to warm up in a really similar way, and then as people develop more and more skills, they start to realize that they need to throw out a lot of what is considered the standard warm-up or the good practice warm-up, because those specific exercises don't actually fulfill the needs that they have. So instead of following any kind of warm-up plan blindly, it's worth just spending a month trying out different things. You know, try the breathing just on its own and see, are you cubing quicker and more smoothly afterwards? And if not, then chuck out the breathing. Do slow solves actually help you? Can you do some fast solves, then followed by a slow solve? If your next solve doesn't feel better, then there's a good chance it's not helping you. You can test this out with literally anything. It could be cubing related, stretching related, literally anything you can think of. Do mathematics before you start solving and see, does it help to focus your mind, or does it actually just make you more confused? In my career working with athletes, I've heard of all kinds of crazy things. Gymnasts who use their competition rings routine as their warm-up, drivers who brought a Nintendo Switch with them and just played that because it helped to focus them better before they went out. So leave nothing off the table and just find what works for you. So to lay those three things out, we would start with this kind of deep breathing exercise. So that's going to be a nice short and sharp inhale, breathing in, and then we're going to breathe really, really slowly on the way out. Now, in the video, I'm doing this breathing in through my nose, out through my mouth. For a lot of people, if you want to breathe slowly, you do it with pursed lips through your mouth. That makes it a little bit easier. You can change this to breathing in and out through your nose, and that's probably what I would recommend if you can make it work, and if you can actually breathe out slowly through the nose, that makes this one ideal. And what this does is it just gets you a nice sharp burst of oxygen up to your brain, but that slow exhale is going to keep your heart rate from getting too high and too fast, which is potentially going to stress you out. So you get that burst of oxygen with the sharp inhale, and then the kind of calming effect of the exhale to keep you smooth and coordinated when you're turning. Next, I'll move on to the mobilization exercises. So as you can see here, we're going from the wrists through all of the different bones and joints in the hand. We're doing one slow rep, then we're going to do 3 reps at regular speed, and then we're going to do 5 reps really, really fast. So that slow one is going to get the muscles really well coordinated. The 3 at regular speed is just going to loosen up the joint, and what we're really interested in is being able to do the smooth and coordinated movement as fast as we possibly can, because that's what's going to help us with the turning. And we're going to move all the way down from the wrists to the hands to the fingers, and just try and get the full range of movement in all the joints that we possibly can. Then finally, we're moving on to the slow solves. So doesn't necessarily have to be slow, but just going at a comfortable pace where you're paying more attention to not making mistakes than you are at hitting your top speed. So this isn't too far off the version that I use for my actual warm-ups. I tend to do the breathing stuff and the mobility stuff in my hotel room before I even go to the competition, just because I find it really useful. But if I start doing it in competition, people are coming up trying to ask me what I'm doing, or just trying to talk to me about other things, and I find that it gets in the way, whereas I can much more easily do slow solving, and that's what everybody else is doing. Even when they're talking to you, they're not really looking at you. Usually they're practicing. So I find that easier to do in the competition itself.